Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Yasmeen Zahar. I am a project manager with Climate Interactive. And today I'll just be talking about some of our tools and what we offer in hopes that maybe something can be helpful for you to use and can you be used in your work. And so we're going to go over a few of our different tools and experiences and materials. And you can feel free to ask questions along the way, but we'll also leave about a half an hour for questions at the end. So there'll be plenty of time for questions. But in the meantime, we'll just be sharing some of our tools and materials and experiences that hopefully will be helpful for you. And so just, I know some of you all are familiar already with our organization and some of our offerings, but just to give a broad overview of what we do, we create system dynamics modeling and experiences that are free and open to anybody to use. And we hope that they are useful in helping people understand the different impacts of climate solutions, greenhouse gas emissions reductions, energy transition, and it helps us see things at quite a global and holistic systems perspective. And we have different ways of doing that. So a lot of times it's through systems modeling, but it's also through workshops, through facilitated experiences. And we really emphasize our tools being free and open for all to use. And so because of that, we've seen our tools used all over the world by over 300,000 people in 163 countries. And we hope more and more every day. And they're just led and used by anybody who comes to our website, learns about our tools. We offer some trainings, all for free also, to more in-depth comprehend some of our tools, but everything is available to you. And because of that, we've seen it really grow and grow a lot. And many of our tools are available in many languages. So if you're looking to facilitate or learn or be trained in some of our tools, they're available in many languages, and we are always hoping to have them translated into more languages. So that is always an option to have it be in the language that is best for you and works best for who you might be using it with. And so here are just some examples of events around the world that have been held using some of our tools. These events really range from using our tools in classrooms, using them with government officials, using them in the private sector, with civil society and community groups. So the tools are also quite adaptable to whatever you might use them for. Most often they're used in a group setting with a facilitator explaining them and sharing them, but you can also use them just for your own learning and for your own research. So you have many options with how to use the tools, and our team is very responsive and very open to any questions that you have. You can email us anytime. We can direct you to whoever might be most useful for you, or we are happy to just answer your questions. And so I'll shift into kind of explaining what these tools are. And then again, any questions, maybe throughout this hour, you can leave them in the chat. And then at the end, we can open them more for verbal questions as you wish. So one of our biggest tools is called En-ROADS. And again, I know maybe about 10 of you have already participated in one of our experiences, the climate action simulation. But for those of you who are new to our tools, En-ROADS is a system dynamics model and simulation tool that was developed by our team alongside our very close collaborators at the MIT Sustainability Initiative within their business school. And It's used to help people understand the impacts and how to achieve things like our energy transition, climate solutions through different actions, which we'll look through in a second. And it does so by giving you those options to look through things like consumption and policies. And in real time, it shares what the impact of those actions are. And so in real time, you can see which solutions maybe have more or less of an impact towards limiting temperature change, but also towards limiting some of the other climate impacts that are also included in the model as well. And En-ROADS is a global model, so we're looking at things quite holistically. So the way that it's set up is that we're looking at solutions at a global model. So what if the whole world participated or did one of these solutions? What would that look like? And it helps kind of identify solutions that are higher leverage and lower leverage, and shifting some of those preconceived perceptions of which actions or solutions make a really big difference and maybe don't make as much of a difference. And so we'll just go over quickly just some of the basics of En-ROADS. And again, I'll also share this PowerPoint and all of these links with you at the end so that you have access to all of these models and all of these materials. En-ROADS just runs on a browser, so it's just a link that can be accessed by anyone. And once it's opened on a browser, it can be run offline as well. So whatever is easiest for you or wherever you need to run it, it's very fast and runs pretty easily on most computers and tablets, not yet on mobile phones. And so here, what we're looking at is the homepage of the En-ROADS model, and we haven't yet touched anything. So this is what we call our baseline scenario, which means kind of a reasonable place to start that we will then input more solutions to limit temperature change. So in our baseline scenario, which isn't necessarily a projection, but it just takes the latest science and market trends and market data and puts it together to give us a place to start. So in this starting scenario, we are reaching 3.3 degrees of warming by 2100. And so ideally with En-ROADS and with creating a climate scenario, we will decrease that number to ideally the internationally agreed upon goals of 2 degrees and more challengingly, but most importantly, 1.5 degrees. And so the way that En-ROADS works is you have these 18 sliders here on the bottom, and they all move and they're all dynamic. So they're all now set to the status quo. So status quo is something that we've calculated based on these market trends and market data, and then you can shift them. So let's say you want to increase renewable energy in the world. You can highly subsidize it. You can keep it a bit status quo, but higher, subsidize, or highly subsidize. And you can slide it like this. And so you'll notice that the model starts to change immediately. So here in our baseline scenario, we have the renewable energy in green. Let's say we highly subsidize it. Everything changes because it's a systems-based model. So we see, of course, a big jump in renewable energy, but we also see a decrease in some of our fossil fuels because renewables is now more affordable than some of those fossil fuels. And then we also see a temperature decrease because of that displacement of fossil fuels. And so you can replay that change up here if you want to review that a bit. So you can look at each of the different colors each time. You see that natural gas is decreasing quite a bit, so is coal. Oil less so because it's less displaced by renewable energy in the current transportation system, for example. And so you can continue building off of this. So we've invested, let's say, in renewable energy, and let's say we also want to electrify the transport system. So we can do that here. We highly subsidize electrification, and we see what changes there as well. So the actions build on each other. So because we've already subsidized renewable energy, and now we'll need more electricity because we're electrifying the transport system, we're going to see the renewable energy wedge go even higher. And we start to displace oil. And so this is how we use En-ROADS. We build scenarios. You can use it to identify and really go deep into one of these areas. And if you click on the title or the three dots, you have a lot more detail and you know exactly what we mean when we mean highly subsidized. And you can shift the years that you want. You can add some more detail to R&D breakthrough cost reduction, storage breakthroughs. And so if you're specializing in a particular area, you can focus in on that and just learn a little bit more, especially those working in maybe the agriculture sector. We have this in deforestation and food. We have a lot of different examples or ways in which we model things like deforestation and food through food waste, through food from animals. We recently updated the entire land sector to include some more details like forest degradation. And so you have a lot of options here to explore each of the sliders individually, and you can also use them more holistically, which tends to be the way we use it more, is to build a scenario and understand how each of these solutions and sliders interact with each other. And so you can continue building off of the scenario and learning, okay, since we've subsidized renewable energy and electrified the transport system, what happens if we also tax coal? What does that look like? And then that will look different than if we just tax coal by itself without having done some of these other policies. And so learning the interactions between the different solutions is one of the biggest use cases of En-ROADS and really helps build that understanding of the dynamics and key insights between the solutions. And so that's a bit of how we use En-ROADS through our input. And so through these sliders here. And then you also have a lot of different things to explore. So these are our two main graphs, but we have hundreds of graphs. So if you want to look at the impacts other than just temperature change, we are also hoping to add a few more in the next few months. But let's say you want to look at the impact of some of these actions and temperature on sea level rise. This is a map that you can actually look at specific places. So we're also hoping to localize some of those impacts because the model is global. And so you can type in here any place you'd like, and you see some of those impacts here of sea level rise and also land saved. So once we build quite a strong scenario, we'll start seeing more impact on land saved, and you'll start seeing more of these green areas show up, which means that that land is no longer necessarily at risk because of temperature change. And so we have our impacts graphs. You can also look at things like air pollution. That's a really important thing to look at and a really useful thing to look at. We have decrease in crop yield, species and habitat loss, extreme heat data. So if you want to look at impacts, that's here. And then we also have a lot of more specific graphs than just our overall greenhouse gas net emissions. We have them by gas, let's say, if you want to break down where you're making those improvements. So over here on this side of energy supply, you'll mostly be making it within the fossil fuel CO2. On here, you'll be making it with that land use CO2, so you can look at it a bit more in a granular way. And we have even more detail if you want to look specifically at a particular energy source and its demand and its use. We have some land, forestry, food graphs that you can look at. CO2 removal, if you're interested in some of that. Population, GDP data, financial data. And all of these graphs update in real time again to what sliders you're moving and what scenario you're building. And so you can really explore a lot of different things with this tool. And you can do that with a mix of the solutions and the graphs. And here we also have many of our assumptions that are changeable by you. If you don't agree necessarily with one of our assumptions, you can change it because we really want people to use it to their own capacity. If you think our climate sensitivity shouldn't be at 3 degrees, you can change it, and that'll change in the model itself too. So there's a lot of different ways and options that you can use En-ROADS. And here are all of the languages that it's been translated into. I think we're at almost, I think about 20 now. So you have some options here to view the model in different languages. And again, if you are interested in translating it, you can always do so, and we're happy to publish it. And so that's a pretty quick overview of our En-ROADS model in general. And then there's a few different ways that we encourage people to use it. And so the first way is through what we call our En-ROADS Climate Workshop. And so that is kind of the most standard and basic way to use En-ROADS, in that it's usually 1 or 2 facilitators who, just like I did a little bit now, builds a scenario with the input of participants. And so it usually lasts about 1 hour, but it's really up to you how long you want it to last. And you get your input from your participants, maybe your students, maybe other colleagues, and you ask them, let's say, what do you think will have the biggest impact when it comes to reducing temperature change? And then you build that scenario together. You talk about some of the dynamics that exist, and then you debrief together and you share some more findings, some more insights, some more surprises. And it's a great way for people to just learn a little bit more and expose some of their understandings and mental models and see if they're challenged or confirmed, and to work together as a group to build that 2 degree or 1.5 degree scenario. So this is a really good way to engage others, and it's a good grounding mechanism for other conversations too. So it's a great tool to have, and the workshop is just a good kind of base way to encourage others and facilitate an experience for other people. Again, you can always use it just on your own, but in a facilitated group experience, it also has quite a powerful impact. And another way to use it, which I think is the way that many of you all have used it already, is what's called the climate action simulation. And so this is more of a group role-playing exercise or game where, on top of just moving the sliders and just sharing your own opinion, the participants actually take on the role of different stakeholders. So you have industry and commerce stakeholders, conventional energy stakeholders, land and agriculture stakeholders, climate activists, world governments. And so you get the different perspectives and priorities of each of those groups. And so you can advocate, each group gets a briefing statement that we've already written for you. And so then they understand a bit more the priorities of the different stakeholders and how opposing some of them can be and how complementary some of them can be. So this is a really good exercise and game to use when you also want people to understand the additional dynamics that exist more than just moving a slider. So why might somebody move a slider? Why might they not advocate for a particular solution? And it also brings a bit more energy because you're role playing as somebody else. And so it gives a really good energy to the room, and people have gotten really, really engaged in it. And the climate action simulation is a little bit longer than the workshop. Sometimes it lasts maybe on average 2 to 3 hours. And so this is another really good tool. Most commonly, we see it used in academia with students, but we've also used it in the private sector, and people love it as a way to just learn more perspectives and participate in the model, not just as themselves, but as a particular stakeholder. So it's a great way to bring some additional depth to the model, more than just the workshop. And so just to compare the two again quickly, the workshop is shorter. It can really be run for an unlimited amount of people. The workshop, we've run it for people between maybe 5 people to 500 people in big conferences and big groups. And so that can be a little more flexible. It's a bit easier kind of on the spot, and you just build a scenario together. And then the climate action simulation is where it takes a little more prep work, but it's where people are set up and split up into groups. They take on a particular role and they advocate. A lot of times we also include negotiations within the climate action simulation. So that also gets people talking to each other, and it gets them engaged in understanding how to advocate for their certain priority and maybe create agreements or deals with other stakeholders. And so again, bringing that additional layer to the model and to the experience. And this one usually lasts longer than the workshop, about 2 to 3 hours. And you're given briefing sheets, which are already written by us, which of course, all of our materials, you are free to edit and update however you wish. Both the workshop and the climate action simulation. We also have slide decks available. We have guides for facilitators, which I'll go a bit more into. So all of the materials are available for you both to prepare for it, to give to your participants, to train. It's all available online, all free, all open, all with a license that allows you to edit it as you wish. If you are presenting to a more technical audience, you can create more technical briefing sheets, more technical guidance. If you're presenting to an audience with less experience in climate science or climate policy, you can simplify a lot of the material. So it's really up to you. You have a lot of freedom in how to use things. And then the final way and option that we encourage people to use En-ROADS with is what we call our guided assignment. So this is really good for professors and teachers to give to their students. It's essentially a document with a few different prompts and questions that allows them to use the model on their own. So it's also a useful way to use the model yourself with a bit of guidance. So it asks you to create a 2-degree scenario and kind of analyze it a little bit, see what are the benefits of the scenario that you built, who might be losing out from your scenario. That's another thing we try to encourage a lot in these scenarios and in these tools is on top of just moving the sliders, focusing a lot on who is benefiting and what are some of the equity considerations for us to look into before implementing a policy like this. So the guided assignment asks some of those questions. For example, okay, we implemented a really high carbon price, which, yes, lowers the temperature, but will increase energy costs for many, many people. And so think just being aware of some of those dynamics. And so in all of the experiences, we integrate that a little bit, but the guided assignment helps break it down quite clearly and allows you to look at and question some of the different aspects of your scenario. And so those are the three main ways that we use En-ROADS and that we encourage others to use it. And for all of them, there is some training involved. And because En-ROADS is quite a complex model, we have really in-depth trainings available. The most common one is through our En-ROADS Climate Ambassador program. So the Climate Ambassador program is a way for people to become leaders in their communities around climate. So it involves taking our training series, facilitating events, and just sharing En-ROADS with people, and then connecting with the network of ambassadors. So right now we have over 700 ambassadors in over 70 countries who speak over 34 languages. And really, it's all kinds of people. It's really interesting. We have really young people, older people, people in all different kinds of work spaces, and who are all connected through this program. And again, it's also free and open. It's just you have to comply with the requirements to become an ambassador, which is mostly taking the entire training series that we offer and running or leading some of these events.